Hey guys, so Blade show's over. It's Monday morning, and you can probably tell that I'm still haven't recovered. Man, it was a great time. I really enjoyed getting to meet tons of folks I've never met before, see folks I haven't seen in a year or more. It was a lot of fun, but this whole Medford thing has really unseated a lot of the, it's I guess it's just kind of taken over in terms of my thoughts, and I don't know, I just feel like it wound up overturning the experience that I had, and became kind of the predominant thing. And just wanted to kind of talk about that. If you know me at all, you know I don't talk about controversial things. I like to think that I don't talk about them not because I'm a coward, but because I'm too busy listening to talk about them. Because I'm thinking, I know some people would say it's not worth listening to toxic people. That there's people you need to just shut out of your life, and I'm sure that's true in many cases. But if you're in a relatively safe space, listening to people who believe vastly differently than you, I think that's an important skill to learn. And I guess there's just a handful of things that I want to say just regarding this. Chinese Americans in our community personally voiced that they were hurt, that they were angered, that they were frightened by the content of the Medford shirt. And on one level, I get someone saying, it's like secondary outrage, when it doesn't affect you, but you're upset for it. So that kind of like, in other words, if you're a white person and you're offended on behalf of somebody else, that invalidates your opinion. So set that aside for a second. But what about the people who it really does affect? It really does specifically affect. Are we listening to them? A lot of the comments that I'm seeing are people are just too sensitive these days. An overarching philosophy that I have is that people are people everywhere at all times. The ancient Egyptians were the same people as folks in the Middle Ages in Europe, were the same folks as the people living in 2022 today. People are people everywhere at all times. So I fundamentally disagree that on the whole, people are different. Now that's like a holistic perspective I have on humanity. So, do individuals change? Yeah, definitely. I've changed over the years. But if you take 1 million of us, if there was a way of measuring thoughts, attitudes, sensitivities, for 1 million of us today, 1 million of us 1,000 years ago, 1 million of us 1,000 years before that, you're going to find on the whole, we're the same. We're all human. The reason why it seems like people are more sensitive today is because more people have a voice. It used to be that there was one prevailing, predominant perspective. And as long as nothing ever went against that perspective, no one was ever outraged. But now, through social media, through media in general, and then just from like the mixing of cultures and ethnicities and perspectives, more people from more wide perspectives have a voice. So what you're not, there's not this brand new sensitivity for human beings in 2022. People have always been hurt by words. People have always been hurt by non-physical actions. And by that, I just mean, words, body language, things that, you're not physically struck, but something hurt you. And I think it's pretty clear, if you want to call it hurt, anger, those are really two sides of the same coin. So when Medford does his video of being so angry in response to the shirts, whether you want to call that hurt or anger, there's still that outrage, and you could say, well, that's, and I'm hearing people say, well, that's just, he's just being just as sensitive as everybody else. Yes, because we are all sensitive. And some people express their sensitivity through anger. Some people express their sensitivity through being hurt. Some express their sensitivity through silence. But we are all human, and we're all equally sensitive. The term snowflake is something I've been really thinking about a lot, and it's strange that term would have become so popular in our culture, because snowflakes melt under any kind of pressure or any kind of heat. Snowflakes don't get outraged, right? And so people on Team Medford saying that people who got outraged by the shirts and then this recent, special needs helmet post that he made, they're not melting under the heat of the situation. They're outraged by it. And the same goes for people who are calling Medford a snowflake for his very, over-the-top performance and response. He's not melting under the pressure either. He's outraged by it. I don't know what a better term is, but we're all equally snowflakes in the sense that it doesn't take much to hurt us. It just takes the right thing to hurt us. We're all vulnerable at different spots. I really believe that if I knew your weak spot, if I studied you and knew you precisely with 10 words, maybe 15, I could hurt everyone on the planet equally if I knew what 15 words to say to them. So it's not about whether you are sensitive, it's what you are sensitive about. What I want to know is, why aren't we listening? When someone says something hurt them, just because that's not our weak spot, that's not what would have hurt us, why does that make what hurt them invalid? I do believe that words have power. As a believer, as a Christian, I believe that words brought everything into existence. that God spoke and there it was. I do believe that words do something. There's a social construct between all of us, and we have allowed to be able to communicate with each other. We have to allow words to have power. We have to allow words to have meaning. A book can't be a turtle if the word book really meant turtle to half the population. We'd have to figure that out, because we have a social construct where we need to be able to communicate with each other. We need to be able to express outrage, and we need to be able to express love. So the concept that, words only have power if you give them power, yes, that's accurate. But we have to give them power to be able to have a society where we understand each other. The question is, how are we going to use that power? And when someone says, "This hurt me," just because that same comment would not have hurt you, can you not imagine there being something that could hurt you? Just words, but that could hurt you. And if there are words, which I believe there are for everyone, if there are words that could hurt you, why is it hard to believe that words hurt someone else? And if you are the one who used those words, and you're in, in this instance, we're talking about visual imagery. If someone drew a goofy looking picture of me, would that hurt me? No. But if someone drew a goofy looking picture of someone else and it hurt them, and they told me that it hurt them, would I believe that it hurt them? Yeah, why not? If one of the first things that you learn in a relationship as you kind of grow is to validate feelings. If you really have like husband and wife is a great example. It's very typical for people in a relationship like that to hurt each other unintentionally. And the worst thing that you can do when you hurt someone unintentionally is tell them they're overreacting. What you were trying to do, my intention was not to hurt you, therefore you shouldn't be hurt. It's better to listen to them and to learn. You can apologize for an outcome without necessarily needing to apologize for the initial actions that resulted in the outcome. Unintended consequences are just a fact of life. And being the kind of person who can say, I was trying to do X, I accomplished Y, I unintentionally accomplished Z in some cases. I'm glad that I was able to accomplish Y, and I regret that Z happened. If I had to do it over again, I would try to think of another way to accomplish Y without Z happening. I don't think that there's an obligation for anyone to do this. And by that, what I mean is, if you were obligated to apologize for something, anytime you've ever made a kid apologize, it's almost kind of pointless, right? It's kind of a rote, apologize and mean it. Making someone apologize is unfruitful. So saying someone is obligated to apologize is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I think we do better when we listen and when we, even if we don't apologize for our actions, if we acknowledge the effect our actions have. I guess what I want to know is, are we listening? Everyone is so quick to invalidate everyone else's perspective and only accept the perspectives of those that jive 100% with themselves. And I just think our community, and I mean, honestly, the world, but let's just start with the knife community, that we would be better if we were listening. I hope that those of you who saw the shirt went and watched Medford's video explaining the shirt. Do I agree with what he said? No, but I listened. Those of you who were on Team Medford from the get-go thought it was hilarious and people were too sensitive about it. Did you go and listen at all to what people were saying about it? Did you give them the time and like the emotional, like mental space to hear what they had to say? As a follow-up, when was the last time that you heard something that changed your mind? If it's been a while, then you're not listening, because none of us are 100% correct. We all have blind spots. And refusing to listen is refusing to grow. So for folks on both sides, I think we would be a better community if we expressed our care for each other by listening and not shutting people down on both sides. Is there a time to stop listening and a time to act? Sure. Everyone has weaknesses. Mine is, I always prefer to gather information than to make decisions. Some people prefer to make decisions rather than to gather information. It's a sliding spectrum, right? And neither of us are right. If I gather information forever and never make a choice, never make a decision, that in itself is a choice and a decision. People also, speaking of this spectrum, I think this is another kind of, I guess, a philosophy of mine. And it does come from my theological perspective. You know, I'm a Baptist minister and been a Christian since I was 16. And I believe that humans are made in the image of God. And whether or not you agree with me on this, I think you'll understand this. I think you'll see what I'm saying here. God is just, okay? He is holy, and anything that is wrong is antithetical to his being, right? God is love. God embodies what love is. Love is just an attribute of his. So you have here justice and love. And as a Christian, I believe that justice and love were perfectly expressed on the cross, because Jesus died as an act of love, but he died because of the holiness of God. The holiness of God demanded that sin be punished, and his death satisfied both of those aspects of God, that he loved us enough to die, but he was just enough that death was required. We are made in God's image. Now, again, whether you agree with me, just don't check out on this, okay? Just hear me out. I believe we're made in the image of God, and which means, but we are also corrupted, right, from sin. And some of us are more on the justice scale, and some of us are more on the love scale, because we get those attributes from the perfectly just and perfectly loving Creator who created us. And like I said, even if your theology lines up nowhere near what I'm saying, I think that this is at least a helpful analogy for you, that some people have what I would say is justice run amok, which is to say that that their justice and their hatred of wrong is never tempered, or maybe perhaps not never tempered, but it's rarely and not equally tempered by love. And anything that is wrong, whether it's wrong actually or wrong from their perspective, I think a good way to say it is they go on a crusade for it. There's almost a supernatural calling on them to right that wrong. And although that is an admirable attribute, when not paired equally with love, it does destruction. It's justice run amok, and justice run amok is no justice at all. On the other side, there are those of us who are love run amok, and I'm in that camp. If you've ever talked to me at any length, you would know that about me. I always prefer to give people unending second chances. I do my best to never hold any kinds of grudges. And when someone does something that I think is wrong, I'm more likely to turn a blind eye to it in order to maintain a relationship. I'm almost like a chameleon in some ways, where if you were to listen to me talking to someone who was extremely right-wing, I'm listening to them, and I'm talking to them, and I'm asking questions and getting feedback that would make a listener think, oh, he's 100% right-wing. If I'm talking to someone who's left-wing, I'm asking questions and engaging with them, and someone say, oh, he's 100% left-wing. It's not that I'm trying to lie or be a coward by not saying I 100% disagree with what you're saying. It's just that I tend to sidestep some of those more awkward conversations in hopes of maintaining the relationship. But again, I think that is an example of love run amok, because sometimes you need to say, I respect you, but I respectfully disagree with what you're saying. it could be as simple as, this guy loves this knife. I think this knife is garbage, but I don't want to hurt his feelings. But could the friendship handle a disagreement as trivial as that? Absolutely. And just tell him that. This person's political beliefs are way, outside of what I believe. Push back into that and say, I don't know that I agree with that, or that I understand what you're saying. So you have people like me who tend to be love run amok, that there's just not enough justice in the love equation. And you have other people who are justice run amok, and there's just not enough love in the equation. And I think the key to this, again, as a Christian, I believe that those are perfectly united in God. And if we believe in what Jesus did for us on the cross, and we have the Holy Spirit living in us as a result, then we ought to be able to more closely make those two things match up. But again, whether you believe that or not, even as a Christian, we're still human. And everybody's, like I said at the beginning of this, everybody is human 100% of the time, everywhere, at all times. If we can recognize which side of the scale we fall to, we can recognize that there's value in being a justice-driven person, that there's value in being a love-driven person, but there's weaknesses that we have to be aware of if we are justice-driven, and there are weaknesses we have to be aware of if we are love-driven. And we need to be conscious of where we fall on that scale and do our best to manually interject the other part of the equation that we don't normally inject. And I think if we can do that, and like I said, part of it is that listening, that listening factor, that we're hearing what other people are saying, and that we're trying to make decisions a little bit slower. My initial reaction when someone has done something wrong is to say, "Oh, don't worry about it." Other people's reaction when someone's done something wrong is like, you're the worst person on the planet. Both of those may not be appropriate for the situation. Perhaps the person, when someone says or does something wrong, you don't need to say, "It's okay, don't worry about it." You need to say, "Yeah, that was wrong. Here are some ways that we need to make this right, or we can't make it right and we need to part ways," or whatever, So both sides can, in those extremes, make bad decisions. And so being patient, listening, thinking critically, I think these are all important skills. And knowing yourself, knowing where you land on all of this. I don't know. Do I wish that Blade Show had just been tons of fun, not a problem in the world, everybody got along, we all had a great time, we all spent too much money on knives, and we came back really tired, and that's it? Yes and no. I was, deeply upset by the way things went with the whole Medford situation and the way things continue to roll out. But I'm grateful in some ways that it's happened, because I think maybe it can be an opportunity for us to take stock, and those of us who are willing to, on either side of the equation, I hope that if you are on Team Medford, or if you're on Team Anti-Medford, that you've listened to this the whole way through. Because I don't have a message for one side or the other. I have a message for all of us, because we're all human. let's listen to each other. Let's hear each other out. Let's make our community the best that it can be, because we all know we have one thing, if nothing else, we have one thing in common. We have one thing that we can all get behind. It's things with sharp edges, right? We can disagree on steel, handle material, ergos, geometry. Y'all know we can argue about a lot of stuff related to all of that. But we do have that in common, you know? That's why I said, what about Breakfast at Tiffany's, right? She said, I remember the film, and as I recall, we both kind of liked it. And I said, well, that's the one thing we got. It's a place to start, right? Let's be the kind of community that welcomes the most left and the most right kind of person. Because even though, the most love-minded, the most justice-minded, the most this and the most that, whatever. Let's be the kind of community where every single person is welcome. And we have the courage to disagree, but we have the love to put an arm around the person at the end of the disagreement and keep on talking about knives. I appreciate y'all. Y'all have added so much to my life over the last several years. Been with me through some tough times. So thanks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hearing me out. We got to figure out something to do in between Blade shows, right? There's got to be something else we could do. Middle of the year or something to get together. You know, once a year is just not often enough for me. I don't know about you. But yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks for hearing me out. If let's put our listening ears on, and let's do our best to balance that love and justice thing. All right, thanks, guys.